Tonight, our main speaker is Marcie. Help me welcome Marcie.
Hi everybody, I'm Marcie. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be sober. Thank you for asking me to come and share my story tonight. So I was really just thinking of experience, strength, and hope. So when I can't tell my story without telling part of my brother's story. And so I was raised in a alcoholic family, whether that was a practicing alcoholic family or not a practicing alcoholic family. It was a very alcoholic family. I started drinking when I was 12, and that became learning how to get my drinks, and you're always hiding it when you're young. And so I was hiding my liquor for a long time, and when I got to high school, my drinking really took off. To the extreme, on my 16th birthday, I had a couple friends pick me up for school, handed me a bottle of Southern Comfort, and said, "Happy birthday, Marcie." And so I had proceeded to drink that bottle of Southern Comfort from Chino Valley to Prescott High School in a course of probably 25 minutes, about probably a third of the bottle. So no food on nothing, right? So here I am, drunker than shit. I roll out of the car. I put in a piece of the the light blue colored peppermint gum. To this day, I cannot eat that gum. So I put in my gum in my mouth, and I'm like, okay, I get myself all straightened up, right? And I walk into my class. I was a junior in high school, and promptly pass out. And wake up in a puddle of my own vomit. As they're dragging me out of the classroom, saying, "Come on, Marcie, we have to go." And coming to in the nurse's office, thinking, holy shit, I have to get out of here. So needless to say, I never went back to that class. Never. That was just like one of the many classes that I dropped. I dropped that one. Thankfully, I had learned how to write a check before that had occurred, because it was an economics class. So that was just kind of the starter. That was how I drank. Every single time I drank to get drunk, no matter what. If I played sports in high school, and so you had to sign this thing called the honor code that said that you couldn't drink or use drugs or anything like that. And I was like, well, shit, I can't get caught doing that. And so what would happen is I would be the designated driver, right? And no matter how much we had looked at all of it, and so when we went out, there would always be enough for me to get drunk when I got home. And so I kind of lived that way for the 3 years going to Prescott High School. And I remember being a senior and finding out that my prom date had dumped me, and how upset I was, just absolutely crushed, because, I was a senior in high school and it was prom and it was a really big deal, right? And I remember thinking, I can't get drunk. I can't drink because I don't want to be an alcoholic. So I cannot drink. So I promptly smoked a bowl instead. So time passes, and we go to a senior party, and I am so excited that I don't have to be the designated driver. I could be the designated drunk. And it was just, we got a bottle of Everclear and some Purple Passion and just this really sweet something. It tasted like Kool-Aid. And we went out to the woods, because that's what we did. We went to parties out in the woods here. And and I persist to drink and drink and drink and drink and become angry because here I am drinking. It's my turn to be drunk, and I was not getting drunk. I drank and drank and drank and could not get drunk. That was the first time that I ever noticed that happening. So a little more time passes, and I had moved out, and I am now living with a group of people, and then drinking as much as I possibly can, and then moved into a smaller condo. And I got home from work, and my boyfriend and our roommate had taken a test from me. And so I walked in the door, and they said, "Hey, Marcie, have you ever heard of that 20 questions test?" And I was like, "What 20 questions test are you talking about?" "You know, the 20 questions of if you're an alcoholic." And I said, "Really? How did I do?" And they said, "Well, you said yes to everyone except two. One being, have you ever flown sober?" I'm not a pilot, so therefore I've never flown sober. "And have I ever flown hungover?" Therefore, I've never done that either. So they took the test for me and declared me alcoholic. And my response was, "So pour me an effing drink." And promptly went and got the vodka out of the freezer because it was not going to melt the ice if it was in the freezer, and poured myself a glass of vodka and cranberry juice. So vodka was my drink of choice for a really long time. There was a lot of beverages that I could not drink when I first got sober because it felt like it was missing something. Couldn't drink cranberry juice, I couldn't drink orange juice, I couldn't drink Fresca, I couldn't drink Squirt, anything. And to this day, I've been sober for, 26 years, and to this day, I still have a drink of something and think, that would taste better with vodka in it. So so the drinking progresses, right? And I'm just trying to get drunk as much as I possibly could. And I'm drinking everybody under the table, and I'm not remembering anything. I'm acting out in behaviors that are unbecoming for a lady. The absolutely mortifying experiences that the behaviors that I would exhibit while drinking. Okay, just use your imaginations for a second and think of that that party girl who is absolutely, completely obnoxious. Do you have it in your head? Okay, so good. I was that girl. And so my friends are like, Marcie, you really might want to think about this. And I was like, what? And so here I had already drank my boyfriend under the table, and I drank somebody else under the table, and I'm like starting to get sleepy, and I'm noticing people are walking into the bathroom, and they're awake. I was like, what on earth? They're awake. How can they be awake? I have to tell you that meth was the answer to my drinking problem. Could now drink and be awake for it, right? And so I could remember what was happening and have somewhat control. I could clean my house and look out the windows as much as I possibly can because the police were definitely out to get me. I remember I was toward the end of my drinking and using. There was a party that was for my godson, and so we were all over at their house, who happened to be my dealer's house, and we were drinking and using a bunch of meth, and somebody had this great idea that dropping acid would be really fun. And but not just one, because really, why one if two's better? And so I had already been up for probably 3 or 4 days, and I was looking for this balance of, I wanted to feel normal. So I would drink a little more, and then I'd smoke another bowl, and then I'd do another line, and then I'd drink a little more, and I'd smoke another bowl, and I would drink another line, and really days progressed like this. Then I dropped to that acid, and then all sorts of, I was really tripping, man. I got back to my apartment, which was over on Pleasant Street, not far from Albertsons, or Sprouts now, but and I was looking around, and there was cops down the street. And I was like, what the hell? Am I just being paranoid? There's cops all over the place. They're down the street. Everybody's looking around. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so I talked to the neighbor. I'm completely strung out. And the neighbor says, yeah, somebody threw a Zima bottle into that guy's truck. And I vaguely remember that the truck was orange, and it did have a hole through it, and there was a Zima bottle. And I walked in my apartment, and I looked around and found the 6-pack of Zima and 5 Zima bottles, and I couldn't find the 5th one. Or the 6th one. I have no idea how that got into that truck. I have no idea what happened whatsoever. And I was just absolutely crazy. And I had looked, I was coming down, and I remember looking in the mirror. I was about, 60 pounds lighter than I am now. And I was looking in the mirror and saw nothing. Absolute nothingness. And all I could think was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I went into my bedroom, and I got my bear, and I sat in the hallway, and I remember sitting there rocking back and forth, holding my bear, looking for my brother's phone number, and praying, please God, help me feel normal. Please, God, help me feel normal. And so that same period of time, my brother had gotten a DUI, and he had wrecked yet another vehicle and came into the apartment. And I said, well, can I pour you a drink? He's like, yeah, I'll take something. So I poured myself a vodka and cranberry, and I poured him a vodka and cranberry. So when I say vodka and cranberry, there was this much vodka, this much cranberry, right? And he says, holy shit, Marcie, you're going to drink that? I was like, wow, and he's a drunk. he like keeps getting DUIs drunk, right? And he went over and he took that beautiful glass that I had poured and poured it into a 32-ounce tumbler and filled the rest of it with cranberry juice. I was like, what the hell are you doing? And so that was like one of the eye-openers. So he went to treatment, and while he's in treatment, he had a family week. So it was a 28-day program, as I'm sure some of you have gone through. It was a 28-day program, and during that family week, they had asked us to come. So I'm like, okay, I could stay clean while I go see my brother, because that's really like the right thing to do. And so I drive down to the Meadows and for family week, and we go through start doing the whole process, right? And I guess unbeknownst to me, my brother goes into my car, and he gets into the glove box, and he finds my seal. And he is so proud of himself because he didn't use it that he went back and he shared with his group. And so they said, Marcie, would you like to stay? And I said, no, thank you. And I never went back. That was it. I was no longer going to, but what had happened there is I had an intervention where all of those people were around me, and they called me out on my using and my drinking, and that was really not okay. It was not okay at all. So I am, he eventually gets out of treatment and drags me around to some meetings, right? Not AA meetings, but just some meetings, a different program. And I was like, you know what? I don't get this. Can I at least keep drinking? What do you mean I have to stop using drugs? Can't I just quit? I'll stop using the drugs? Right, got it. I could stop using the drugs. But I don't want to stop drinking. And I ended up losing my apartment and had to move back into my mom's house. And the condition is I couldn't use, right? So my mom says to me, you know, how are you doing with the breakup? Because I not only lost my apartment, I lost the guy too. And because our using was pretty, you know, that damn drug tests. Anyway, so after I moved back home, my mom says to me, Marcie, how are you doing? You know, I'm like, you know, I'm okay. Some days are better than others. Really, I bet those high days are better than the not so high days. And I'm like, yeah. And realized I hadn't eaten for 2 weeks. And she had given me a bear that she'd made that day, and then she took me out to dinner, and I had this huge meal, and I had the willingness to go to these meetings with my brother. So he would drag me around, right? So I'm like thinking, yeah, I'm not going to quit drinking. I'm not going to quit drinking. And so it's like 3 weeks after the breakup, and I'm starting to feel okay. You know, still just drinking beer or whatever, and I could get my hands on. And keep in mind, I was 20 when all of this was occurring. So me going down to the convenience store to buy a bottle of beer or a bottle of anything was not an option. So my brother says to me, hey, Marissa, Ray's going to come to dinner. Why don't you come to dinner with us? And Ray, being a friend of his he had met in treatment with his girlfriend, whom he met in treatment. And so the four of us were going to have dinner together. And I remember going to my dealer/best friend's house before that date. And I remember looking at the bottle of wild turkey and her asking me if I wanted a drink. And my response was, you know, I think I'm going to try to be supportive. You know, and I'm not going to pick up. Meanwhile, I'm thinking about where the meth is. I could taste it, and I was so afraid that I was going to use that I had to leave. So I went ahead and I left, and that was October 27th, 1993. I had a date with a sober alcoholic and have been sober ever since. So I used to tease that I was 13 stepped into the program, and then that show came out about 13 stepping. That was not how it was. So I had a date with a sober alcoholic, and I had the opportunity to go to my first AA meeting after we had that dinner. So they dragged me to this meeting, and you all are laughing and carrying on and having a good time, and then you start to talk about your drinking and start to talk about how your life is so much better now that you're not drinking. And I was like, oh my God, I was home for the first time in my life. I finally felt like I fit somewhere. And so Ray told me, you know, Marcie, you need to get a sponsor. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went out and I found a sponsor, and you know, Marcie, you really need to work the steps. Like, okay, all right. So I was working the steps with my sponsor. You really need to call your sponsor every day. And so I'd call my sponsor every day, and about a few months goes by, and I had noticed a shift in behavior. He was recently out of treatment, only sober for, I don't know, probably 6 months, and he became angry and agitated. And I was like, what the hell is going on with him? And so meanwhile, I'm like calling my sponsor, and I'm working, doing the stuff, all the stuff that he told me to do, and she says, honey, you got to watch him because he's going back out. And I was like, what? No, people come to AA and they're sober forever. And she says, no, he's going back out. And so I break up with him because I'm trying to keep my sobriety first now, right? And I'm really into the steps, and I'm starting to get the hang of this deal. And I go to pick up my stuff, and he was completely shit-faced. Like, not able to stand. And so this was this gentleman was 6'4", 240 pounds, a mustache, an absolutely beautiful human being. And he was white and pale and small and broken. And he said, Marcie, the pain you put me in was too much. I was like, oh my God, it's all my fault. It's all my fault that he relapsed. 3 days later, he died of a drug overdose. And I'll tell you, it took him 3 days to find his body because he checked himself into a hotel room. And I was totally convinced that it was all my fault. And of course, it was not my fault. He had a long history of alcoholism and drug addiction, a history with the Catholic Church, and was an absolute mess, and is in a much better place today. I truly believe that he's in a much better place today. What that man did, though, was he helped me get sober. And so I am almost that. I owe my sobriety to him. So then I was, I had gotten involved with these big book thumpers, right? And because at this point, I was afraid I was going to drink because it was approaching my 21st birthday. I talked to my sponsor and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to do a 4-step. And her response was, Marcie, read the first 164 pages and call me in the morning. So I read the first 164 pages. I called her in the morning and I met with her and we went over the format for the 4th step. And I got busy because I believed that if I were to drink again, I was going to die. Because look at what happened to Ray. He drank again and he died. You know, so I had this newfound faith in Alcoholics Anonymous that if I did what I was told to do, then I wasn't going to drink and therefore I wasn't going to die. And so I was given the willingness like only the dying man gets. And so I remember working the 4th step, and I'm sharing my 5th step with her, and she tells me to go home and read 65 and 66 about the 6th and 7th step, and I was still just absolutely thoroughly confused about what my character defects were, and I didn't really have a grasp of what I was doing with the information. And so I got involved with this group that, and we had, actually the first time I've ever spoken was at the Rarely group 25 years ago, and it's crazy to think, it's absolutely crazy just to think about it, but so then we started a big book study, and it was like I had learned this new all about AA and how it really could change your life, right? So I am just in absolute awe. I'm hanging out with Mike and a bunch of people, and it was really something. So I got into the steps, and I cleaned up the wreckage of my past. I cleaned up the wreckage of my present, because being 20 and getting sober, and there was quite a bit of wreckage in that first year that I created with all the people around me. And so I was like, man, I got to get the hell out of here. I joined the Navy. And so here I am shipping off. I'm picking up my one-year chip at the Rarely Group, and then I spoke for 10 minutes. The following day, I shipped off. And I was like, oh, okay, how am I going to, I could do this. I could do this. This is just a giant mind game, right? And so I am in boot camp, and I'm in a hurry, so I'm brushing my teeth, and I'm throwing the mouthwash back in my mouth, and the company commanders came in and said, drop, give me 20. I was like, holy shit. And meanwhile, I've got this Rembrandt toothpaste and super alcohol mouthwash in my mouth, and I swallowed it. And I felt that burn to my toes. It went into my belly and gave me that warm sensation that only a drink could do. And it scared the shit out of me. I had taken my big book with me, and I got rid of it. I said, here, I can't have this anymore, because obviously if I'm going to have this, I'm going to drink it. And all I could think about is it's right there. And that whole phenomenon of craving, and I was aware that it was the phenomenon of craving that the book talks about. And I was like, oh, shit. Oh, shit. And then so I really I prayed. I was like, please, God, take this from me, because I couldn't go to any meetings. I was in boot camp, for Christ's sake. And so I get out of, I graduate boot camp, and I am being sponsored by Mike, and I am still looking at another 4-step because I'm trying to get through a lot of this stuff, and getting ready to go to my permanent duty station. And I was driving up in Monterey, California, and I threw a cigarette butt out the window, and I got pulled over. It was freaking raining outside. I still get pulled over for throwing a cigarette butt out the window, and I was so mad that they pulled me over for that. They wrote me a ticket. It was a $250 ticket, and I was like, how the heck am I supposed to come up with $250 to pay for this stupid ticket for throwing my cigarette butt out the window? And I call him to complain about the justice system, and he says, well, Marcie, that was a crappy thing to do. If you do crappy things, you're going to get crappy things. And so later, I called him back and was complaining again about the judicial system, about how they're fining me another $250 because I didn't pay the fee off on time. So now this frickin' cigarette that I threw out the window has cost me over $500. And he says, well, Marcie, that was a pretty crappy thing to do. And so when I do crappy things today, I still think of, well, that was a pretty crappy thing to do. And you know, my actions, they matter. So I am, what else? So since I got sober, I have worked the steps I don't know how many different times. I've been married twice. Then I started to kind of fall in and out of AA a little bit, right? And so the first time I was married, I was like, oh, you know, I don't think I need AA as much. And it got kind of slippery, right? And I became kind of homicidal and a little bit suicidal, and then it was mentioned to me, hey, Marcie, you want to go to a meeting? And I was dragged back into AA, and then my life started to get better again, right? And so I got married, and then quickly got divorced within 6 months, and that one just did not stick. And came back to Prescott. So I was probably about 7 years sober, or 6 or 7 years sober at the time, and was still active in gradually got active in AA all over again in Prescott. And Prescott Recovery there's something special about Prescott Recovery, or at least there was then. And a lot of the people that I had got sober with were around the rooms. And so I was able to reconnect with the sponsor. Oh, I forgot to tell you what happened. So Mike sponsored me, right? And we're talking about 4 steps. And I'm dating one of his really good friends that he had gotten sober with, and had started to date him while I was here. And he says to me, I'm writing out a 4-step, okay, Marcie, why don't you go ahead and put that in the mail? And I'm thinking of Scott, and I'm thinking of putting my 4-step in the mail and giving it to Mike. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I'm going to get another female sponsor. And so that was what I did. And so at my permanent duty station, I had gotten another sponsor. Her name is Sina. And I was able to share my 5th step with her. And it felt like somebody finally knew me. Therefore, I no longer had to be alone in Washington because somebody knew my whole story. Well, I get home, and I'm reading the stuff in the big book that I was told to read, and then I'm going through the stuff in the 12 and 12 that I was told to read, and realized that I missed a whole section of my inventory and didn't do the sex inventory at all. And I was like, hey, Sina, I just wanted to let you know I forgot something. And she's like, you did? Really? And so I'm doing this. I ended up writing out that inventory, and the amount that I had learned from that was absolutely staggering. And how everything I had ever done, every relationship that I had ever been in, was absolutely connected. And I now had a choice of what I was going to do next. I now knew what the behaviors looked like that were destroying me. Now, knowing what your behaviors look like and then actively doing something different is a much harder task. So then I got out of the Navy. My Scott and I had broke up while I was up in Washington, and I was really just absolutely broken. And here I am again. I'm praying like, okay, God, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? Throwing pennies off a deception pass, praying that this is all going to work out, but then at the end of it, tagging it, God, your will, not mine. And my dad was in a massive motorcycle accident and became a quadriplegic. He, when I came to California to see him on his deathbed, essentially, he said, Marcie, will you come take care of me? This is a man who never raised me. My parents got divorced when I was 3 weeks old. That's when it started, right? So never raised me. Never really had a whole hell of a lot to do with this. And I said, okay, because here in Alcoholics Anonymous, they said that if somebody reaches their hand out to you, you say, yes. And so I said, okay. And I went to California, and I helped take care of him for 3 or 4 months before I went to, before I decided to go back to college, and got him all dialed in. And I was going to meetings in California, and really just, it was okay, and it really felt like everything had happened for a reason. I was no longer in that relationship to open myself up to be able to go and take care of my dad. And that was huge, absolutely huge. And the freedom that came from that was staggering. So as years go by, and the coolest thing about being sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, 24 hours accumulates. If you just don't drink. That is the only thing that I've done right in Alcoholics Anonymous, is not drink, no matter what. And they had, I've gone back to school, joined the Navy, got out of the Navy without drinking. I put myself through college, started putting myself through college, got married, promptly divorced, and came back to Prescott, got super involved in AA in Prescott, and they had, and I was sponsoring people and working the steps and taking people through the steps, and my life was just getting better and better and better all the time. Well, I was approaching 30, and my life wasn't going where I thought it should go, right? So I married a practicing alcoholic. And it was, obviously, that didn't work out. Sober alcoholic, practicing alcoholic, and it was really a pretty tumultuous relationship. I've had 2 kids and another divorce. And so, and then I've gone back to school. I've got a teaching degree. I've taught, and now I have I am a part of a family business that is has been huge. But all of that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for me showing up and doing the next right thing. So when I show up and I reach my hand out to another alcoholic, especially when my life is shitty, my life gets better. And if I say yes when I don't want to say yes to an alcoholic for those purposes, then I get the opportunity to stay sober. So thank you for asking me to speak tonight, because it has given me an opportunity to stay sober, and I'm grateful. So thanks.